Eric, faccio microfono verde, Karel e Joanna.
Grazie.
Microfono rosso.
Looking for Eric.
Lato sinistro. Microfono blu, lato destro.
Don't forget to silence your phone. Unless you already did that.
Light mode might be best with the microphones or avoiding
Blah blah blah.
Hello. Hi.
blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. Blah
I mean,
blah.
Do you want to operate the camera?
Sure. I mean, on 30 seconds on the time.
It's already rolling. We don't need Eric, basically. So we're live? Are we live already?
Have I been saying blah blah blah?
Jesus, blah blah blah. Jesus, are we live? So maybe we can start. This is very Casavetes like. We can start? All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to open the final deliberation of this year's Giornate degli Autori, Wednesday's selection. It is my great pleasure to welcome first and foremost the jury president, Joanna Hogg, who will open this matinee with her speech.
No, I just want to say a few things directed at more than my jury, at the filmmakers who might be watching this, because as a filmmaker myself, I know what it feels like to have a film in competition, and it's very exposing. It's quite an anxiety-making experience. And to say that if you leave a festival without feeling like you didn't have any recognition, you leave without prizes, you don't know what the jury thought, you can feel like your film is irrelevant somehow, invisible. I would like to say that I don't think that is necessarily the case, that we're 11 of us. We all have our subjective opinions. We're all very individual. And you could take another group of jurors with a different president and select different films to the ones that might be selected today. And we all know of films that have left festivals with nothing, that they can sometimes go on and stand the test of time. So we don't know this. But to say why it's important to be having this discussion is we want cinema to be part of a larger cultural conversation, a conversation about morals, about ethics, something philosophical even. So it's important to speak and for cinema to be exposed in this way. But I want to say that it's been a really wonderful experience. We obviously haven't come to any conclusion yet, but every single film in this competition has been taken seriously, has been discussed thoroughly and appreciated. And I just want to say this. Thank you. And now it's over to you guys. And I'm planning not really to say anything, but I can't promise I won't.
Thank you very much, Joanna. This morning usually has two parts. First part is dedicated to the 7 films that unfortunately did not make it into the final trio, which will be discussed further on. And it is a really great and appreciated tradition of Giornate degli Autori jury to dedicate to each of the excluded is a nasty word, but that's how it is. Each of these titles, a moment to explain the jury's attitude towards the film. So before we move on to the final discussion among the three nominees, I'd like to call 7 volunteers who decided to describe the 7 films I just mentioned. So why don't we start with Amalia and Sanatorium under the sun of the hourglass.
Okay, so the Quays Brothers Sanatorium Under the Sign of the Hourglass stood out in this year's selection through its original voice and visual form. We have appreciated the intricate craftsmanship of this feature and the interesting mix of stop motion animation and live action. However, we felt that it had a lack of a cohesive narrative structure to bring together this artistic work. That is why we have decided not to include it in our top 3 films.
Thank you, Amalia. David, would you like to say a few words about Boomerang, please?
Boomerang, Shahab. Oh, yeah, sure. Why not? Thank you. Thank you. Boomerang, Shahab Fatouhi's debut feature film captivates with its fragmented portrayal of a lively neighborhood. Through versatile interactions, it offers fresh perspectives on life, inviting audiences to explore relatable human experiences. The film did not make it into the final discussion as the narrative style resonated differently with the jurors.
Thank you, David. To Kill a Mongolian Horse, Saule, please.
By highlighting Mongolian culture and its challenging economic and natural climate, this film presents something both specific and unique, while also resonating universally. We appreciated how it remained true to its origins with a documentary-like quality and a slow, gentle pace that gradually revealed sensitive themes of intergenerational father-son relationship and the difficulties of adapting to a challenging world. While some jury members felt the storytelling approach was somewhat familiar and not entirely accessible, we are glad to have had such a cinematographically rich and complex film in our selection.
Thank you very much, Saule. Salon Joy, Esma, please.
We found The Book of Joy to be a surprising and atmospheric debut, capturing the collision of 2 worlds. The film sets out to explore important themes such as religion, growing up, love, and finding one's place. But in our opinion, it doesn't fully succeed in connecting them with the main narrative. We also felt the characters could benefit from a bit more development to allow a deeper emotional connection and perhaps some additional story building for the protagonists.
Isabella, would you like to say something about Taxi Mon Amour, please?
We appreciated this heartwarming comedy drama that so gently touches upon the human need for connection. It made us all laugh and emotionally engaged. It was especially remarkable in our view, the work the director and the cast did together on the ensemble scenes. We felt we were always laughing with the characters, sharing a moment of their lives and never at their expenses. Although some jury members felt the film was at times indulging over sequences not essential to the core of the story, we all agree it was a real gift to have Taxi Mon Amour as part of the Giornate selection.
Thank you, Isabella. Chris, please tell us about Alpha.
Yes, Alpha by Jan Willem van Eyck is one of the most moving films we have watched, not just in the Giornate degli Autori section, but from the whole Venice Festival. It's breathtaking yet intimate. It's masculine yet emotional. The film takes you on a journey and a roller coaster of emotions from the beginning to the end. Unfortunately, we felt some elements of the storyline were a bit predictable, unfinished, and unbalanced. Nevertheless, it is a huge accomplishment, and it was close to being chosen in the final 3 films.
Thank you, Chris. And last but not least, Sugar Island by Demosthenes, please.
Sugarcane, ID, pension, Afrofuturism, birth. These are some of the elements which comprise the cosmos of Sugar Island and came to life before our eyes through a vibrant and visually stunning avant-garde language. a tough love letter, and a kaleidoscopic portrait of time, of a place, and of a people, all caught in the whirlwind we call the human experience. As jury, we valued and acknowledged the film's grassroots approach and the bold cinematic choices, but we also found the narrative somewhat fragmented, and so we're not fully equipped by the film to explore its depths.
Thank you very much, everyone, for this beautiful moment of respect towards films and filmmakers. I'm very pleased to announce the 3 titles which made it into the final discussion, the nominations for this year's Giornate degli Autori Awards are Super Happy Forever by Kohei Igarashi, The Antique by Rusudan Glurjidze, and Manas by Mariana Brenand. Today, you should be discussing these 3 films. We will go one by one in the order that you discussed them in previous days so that it's fair. And then we will proceed towards voting. So I'd like to open the debate on Super Happy Forever. Please keep it brief and condensed so that everyone can talk. And it's yours. This is the moment to fight for your films and to convince your peers. Victor, we should stick with, I mean, one mic on each side. I guess it's gonna be easier.
Thank you. I guess Super Happy Forever is a good way for us to close this second jury experience. I feel super happy forever, and that film stayed with me, and I know that my co-jury, I've told them so much about this Japanese and French movie. It's definitely the most beautiful love story that I've seen in Venice this year. The most moving one also, and I think it's mainly due to its perfect writing, both in terms of what the characters are saying or not saying, and also how it's been recorded and showed. I mean, that film has some, I would say, signature shots that I have in mind, and I will stay. I don't know if they will stay forever, but that suitcase on the beach, that girl in front of the water, those 2 men sleeping kind of next to each other. It's a film about memories, and it will definitely be one of the strongest cinematic memory I will keep from this 2024 Giornate edition.
Thank you. Who else? Chris?
Can I add? I agree with Victor. I also want to emphasize on the organic and what I think is really authentic looking acting. It is really nuanced, and we get to see the journey of falling in love between 2 strangers, and it is done in such a delicate and nuanced way that it really feels alive. You forget that you're watching a film, and you're all of a sudden drawn into this slow but poetic story. So for me, this was the highlight. Just I don't remember lately seeing such a live looking story that I almost forget that I'm watching a film.
Thank you. Dimos.
Just another thing that I wanted to point out in relation to what you're saying, but also what basically drew me in the film and make me acknowledge it and want to have it like here in the top 3 is its boldness in terms of storytelling. I think that that's very refreshing to see. You don't see it that often, that in the midpoint of the film you just basically have a second one, you know. It's I think it's beautiful to have something like this in the selection also, just even if we didn't select it for our top 3, because it really is daring and it's something to appreciate, and nevertheless how that works, because it's not just a show off. It's not just a thing to try to be experimental, but it's like an experimental for a cause. So it's really important to have that in mind. For in terms of like moving storytelling forward.
Saule?
I indeed agree with Dimos that this film structurally probably stood out the most out of all the films from the competition. And I did appreciate it. It was a pleasant surprise, but at the same time, just a reminder of the conversation we had, that it did indeed feel like the second part felt a little bit explanatory, in the sense going back to everything we witnessed in the first part of the film, and then almost like checking a list of everything we've seen to give an explanation of why it happened in that way, leaving a little less room for the viewer to create its own interpretation or create its own connections between or links between the events or people or objects and spaces. But nevertheless, it was beautiful. It was mystical at moments. It played around with nostalgia or memory or imagination. And it did stand out with its very gentle romance that doesn't come too strongly in your face, and creates this sort of like intense care and loving, but without expressing it too harshly.
Thank you. Victor, you want to add something briefly? Yeah.
I mean, I understand the feeling of list that you had watching the film, and we all say it's so gentle, but to me it's also generous. And I just would like to say something about the third character, or maybe the fourth character, the Vietnamese woman that we meet and that becomes the main character at the end of the film. And I thought that was a very strong gesture to just move away from that love story or friendship story to another one that deserves as much attention as all the other ones.
Isabella?
I absolutely agree that I'm also really happy that this film is part of the of our final selection. It is among the three. I think it's a great cinematic accomplishment. It's a film with excellently written, very precise, and that is indeed proposing a very interesting way of framing a storytelling. For me personally, I had a different viewing experience, in the sense someone was mentioning you forget you're watching a film. That was never the case for me. I always felt the structure of the film I was watching, and I felt a certain lack of freedom within this structure. This held me back slightly during the viewing, and this is why this among the three, it's not the film I would be fighting for, but I absolutely recognize it as a great cinematic accomplishment.
Anyone? Okay. I mean, the film has been very thoroughly discussed at previous meetings, so why don't we move on to the second candidate, which is The Antique by Rushudan Glurjidze. Who would like to open the discussion on The Antique? Come on. This is the
Since
moment.
I have the microphone,
Yes. Isabella, please.
I can continue, and makes a nice bridge with what I was just saying. Actually, this is the film I would be more passionate arguing for. I think out of the whole selection, there were many films that stood out for different reasons. But for me, this is definitely the cinematic experience that I will take away with me for the longest. And although compared to the other films in our top three, is maybe the least rounded work. We discussed previously its flaws and its unevenness, which is something that is can't be completely denied. But I also think that this is a film with the great depth. It's a film that I think would really benefit from second viewings, which is something that we couldn't do for any of the films, which is only fair. But I really think there is something there, and there is a director who has a vision, and I would be very eager to follow her career after this. I think awarding this kind of film would make a statement about the kind of cinema that we think should be encouraged and supported, and also that the film itself is a really great accomplishment.
Thank you. David.
I would agree with you, and I think I'm on the same page with you. For me, this was a viewing experience that it's not that I want to watch it again because I feel like I want to give it another chance of exploring more of it, but more like I really want to immerse myself in the world of the film again, which I don't know if that I feel like about all of the films in the selection this way. But with this film, I felt like there was so much detail, for example, to the mise en scène. I feel like I could even breathe the images, and it's something that really held me in its atmosphere, which I really appreciate. And I also really liked the vision of the film, how it might have felt like a lot of different parts of the story that maybe in the writing didn't come together 100%. But I really loved exploring the different parts and feeling like I am part of, for example, being in the flat, feeling the atmosphere of the flat, but then also being outside, feeling the cold of the city. So yeah, I think it would be, I would be proud if we were to support this film.
Amalia.
I'm also agreeing with my colleagues. I am also an advocate for this film. I think it's a really rich and complex work. I think each frame has a really beautiful atmosphere. You can see like a lot of great detail in the set design, in the costumes, and also I think all the characters are very, very complex. And in a way, I am not bothered by this, like that the film doesn't have a really clear structure, because I feel like it's like a little bit like in real life. You are just experience this moment of like these characters encountering each other, and you are just following along the story that is like, it gets messy for political reasons. It gets, and you're just there together with the characters. So I really appreciated this film, and I also really wanted it to be in the top 3. So yeah.
Come on, Chris.
This was definitely a special film, and I think it's an important one. I cannot, say something without emphasizing on the whole feeling of the film, the set design, the locations, the city of Saint Petersburg. It was so well shot, framed, stylized that it felt like a whole character. So, as Isabella said, there was definitely a feeling that there was a director behind this film. It had its strong decisions that were not abstract and taking away from the story, but helped the story develop. However, I think there were some parts of the storyline that were left with either dead end, or they just were not that developed. For example, there was this pregnancy book that we see in so many scenes without actually following or adding to the character that she may be pregnant, which I think for a lady, this is a huge thing, and it can influence their whole decisions. so as we discussed long when we were having our almost daily meetings, it had its flaws. It felt a bit unbalanced, but at the same time, it was also really epic, especially the ending, you know, and it is a huge accomplishment. Without spoiling the end, you know, if we just remember the scenes and how big of a scale they were, you know, this is such a challenge to direct. And so I think I'm here in the middle, and would love to hear from you. What do you think about, you know, the people who are fighting for it? What do you think about all the parts of the narrative that were left a bit hanging?
Of course, yeah.
To me, the pregnancy book, I thought a lot about it afterwards, and it was a bit, for me, a kind of a teasing with the viewer. I felt the director was playing a little bit with us, and with the expectation that the character, being a woman in her 30s, would have to deal with something like this in her life. I also thought at some moment that she was just using the book to sort of scare off the guy, because she understood he was following her, but that was maybe just me. But I think it was like parts of all these threads that were left open were also intentional, because this is also a bit how life sometimes feels. We're not always connecting all the dots. Not everything has to make sense. And there is a dialogue in the beginning of the film when the woman and the old man. Sorry, I don't remember the names of the characters now.
Vadim Vadimic.
Thank you. And he's asking her if she came because of she's a war refugee, and this is exactly the kind of expectation that we have also as a Western audience watching the story. But she's very bluntly replying, "No, it's a love. Mine is a love problem." And I think the pregnancy book sort of follows on that. It shows us that yes, she might be a refugee, but she's also just like a person with a life and their unfinished questions and quests. So maybe I'm also in a moment in my life where I'm more interested in a kind of cinema that is less obsessed with the perfect screening, with the perfect script, with the closing all the dots, and I'm really interested in this in the kind of answer and questions that this film is proposing.
David seems to.
I mean, only
having
if
something to say.
I would only add to it only if nobody else has something.
I don't see the forest of the hands, so feel free to talk.
I would also just respond shortly and say that maybe what we have called so far flaws in the storytelling, I think I also see it as a respect for the audience, because with other films in the selection, sometimes I felt like it was made maybe a bit too easy for audiences to follow the storyline. And with this film, with Antiquariati, I felt like there was a deep respect for the audience. We were trusted such a complex story, and not everything is to be figured out immediately. But it's up to us to make sense of it and also find in it what we find important. For example, I mean, the story also wants to be universal, as there are sentences like Vadim Vadimic saying, I guess we're all refugees somewhere. And I feel like people can, even though it is such a specific setting, I feel like it wanted to be universal by giving so many different impulses that, yeah, the audience can figure out for themselves.
Dimo, then Victor.
There's a lot of things being said, and I want to like kind of comment on everything. But taking the last thing that you said about that the film didn't really like that it's generous filmmaking in that sense that you don't that you're not left with the dots connected already. That you're left to that you're supposed to connect them yourselves as an audience. I think that I don't necessarily find that respectful in that way, or disrespectful if it was that more explained, you know, because I did find trouble with, like, I don't have so much trouble with the loose ends, like as Chris said about the pregnancy book. I also realized that it's like a part of life that we all have like loose ends. At the same time, I did feel that there were a lot of the flaws that you already talked about and the structural problems. I did have trouble with them in terms of like storytelling. I did have trouble when I felt some things written in or like abruptly written in, like there are a lot of characters being put into places that they move the story forward, and that was also in a way like very explanatory or too much explanatory, or connecting dots when they actually needed to be connected. So I felt that very like you know, keeping loose ends for the sake of keeping loose ends and afterwards connecting them abruptly, so like that we actually are led to a more like specific narrative thing. And that felt to me as a viewer kind of unbalanced, like having an unbalanced experience, a viewing experience. And after some time, I had a lot of trouble like following the story, being fully invested in, because I was feeling like either left to go on my way or being dragged to.
All right, Victor. Saul.
I will agree with what Dimos have said, and I also agree with everyone else. I really liked the film. I loved its themes. I loved the protagonists and how they were developed. I loved their both's relationship with each other and them separately coming from very different worlds. And I could relate to the setting a lot, and with the Vladimir as well. I saw a lot of my own family in him. But at the same time, as if we spoke about Super Happy Forever being two separate films, this felt like two separate films for me. I didn't really necessarily find the connections that were established within characters convincing. It felt like there was a lot of time spent on details that weren't necessary or that weren't really bringing the story further, like the pregnancy book, coming back to that. But at the same time, there were so many other lines of the characters that would have been so much more interesting to explore with the screen time that were not provided at all. Hence, I do agree with Dimos that it felt, especially coming to an end, the second part of the film felt really abrupt, and coming in a way out of nowhere without a really not a strong motivation, but undeveloped motivation, with impressive settings, but at the end, especially with the titles, leaving me a little bit confused on how these two separate films, as they felt for me, were connected.
Thank you, Saul. And Victor, could you please wrap up the discussion
Of course, yeah.
about the antique?
No, just maybe if the crew and the cast, I mean the team from the antique is watching us, we did not only discuss about the pregnancy book. There were a lot of other details that we discussed. I mean, the photography, the wardrobe, and a lot of things. I just wanted to say that Medea was a very strong character, and I was astonished by also the political gesture that film represented. And as an exhibitor, it's the film in competition that I don't know, I was the most curious about after watching it. And I hope that the director will travel across Europe and further, because I would love to hear a Q&A about that film. There are so many questions that I would like to ask to the entire team on how they made, why, and maybe also corresponding to all the unsolved mysteries of the film.
Thank you very much. Manas is the third title to be discussed today. Esme, please.
Manas is the film I'll be fighting for. I think Manas has deeply touched me. I think the most from the entire festival, from all the films I've seen, because it felt so pure. It felt very sincere. It's just something that I completely forgot I was watching a film. Um, I think it's also such a story so many people from all around the world can relate to, because I think it's something a lot of women have experienced in some kind of way. I really like the fact that a taboo topic was covered, and it is a topic that is so hard to cover in cinema, because in a lot of films you see these kind of scenes becoming graphic, or you actually see the things that happen, the abuse that happens, which is very traumatic. And I thought the power of this film really was that you didn't see anything of the abuse itself. It's just something that was like a feeling you got from watching the film. It was very layered, and to me, this is really a film that needs to be seen from by people from all over the world. I thought it was really, really strong.
Gregor.
Thank you. I agree with Esme. This film probably touched me the most out of all the films we've watched in the competition. Agree on the fact that even though we didn't see the abuse happening, it felt nevertheless very, very strong and impactful. I myself was really wondering how the director's actually going to do it without showing anything, but she managed to convey it perfectly. Also, with the respect to the actresses, to the young actresses that have performed incredibly, I think the acting of this film is impeccable. Although obviously the acting in the two other films is as well. I found the film the best paced out of these top three films that we have seen. It maybe didn't go for as much as the Antique that we just discussed, but the narrative was really cohesive, really directed towards one goal. I found that the slow-paced and fast-paced scenes were really well distributed. So I think the temporism of the film was kind of the cleanest, the neatest, and I think that's obviously important. Yeah, I'm also rooting for this film in the competition.
Thank you. Maria?
I think that conveying this story in such and this difficult topic in such a subtle and gentle way, it also puts the viewer in the position to question what do I see, what do I know, and how do I react to it, which is, I think, the most important question for both the characters inside the story and the viewers outside the story.
David?
I would just shortly add that I think coming out of our discussions, I feel like there was a collective experience of being very immersed in this film, and maybe this being the most universal watch, as in you could really feel, taste, hear, smell the screen. Which is why I guess we forgot to be sitting in a cinema. So, which we also talked about how many of us, or most of us, don't even know this area in the world, and yet we felt so inside the story, and I think that's a great accomplishment.
This is the last chance. I don't have to remind you. You've been here before. Saula.
I was hoping for someone to say something maybe not as nice, but everyone seems to be sharing the most brilliant reviews about the film, and I will jump in this train on this train. It's the most powerful, the most touching film, the one that kept me thinking about it for days, the one that actually evoked a feeling of sisterhood and desire to help my friends and people around me who have gone through something similar, or in a way protect them from going through something similar. I felt like I grew together with the protagonist because of the pacing and how we saw her transformations through the whole story. I could see a lot of myself in her as well, and reflect on my own teenage years. and every single character in it felt like they had the attention they desired or they needed to be developed or necessary in the story. Not like other films, it did not feel like it was explaining itself too much. It suggested the interpretation, but it also left the room to find it yourself instead of really imposing it, which I really appreciated. And I felt like through our also discussion, through our interpretations of it, we also find the wholeness of it, which also sort of then reflected the communal experience of watching it together.
Victor, and then Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really impressed by the film and really moved both by the film and by the emotions that you all felt watching it and after the screening. I still wonder how she created such a world within a world inside that cabin, how she managed to, the mise en scène inside this tiny room with 5 or 6 people in it, the tension, that was amazing. And I had a feeling of never seen before, which is a strong feeling that I like watching films when we go to those barges on the river. And at that moment, the film became huge to me because yes, it's perfectly done and there is so much precision, and I'm not sure if it's kindness, but about that very specific topic, and also in terms of creating a new cinematic universe, or maybe putting by the cinema that region on a map, on a cinematic map. That was so strong. And I think it's a film that we can show to younger audience, because it's so well done, written and careful, and I can't wait to screen it to people that should be aware at a young age of what's going on in that part of the world, but also in our home and stuff.
Chris?
I was talking with my mom yesterday. She asked me about the films that we've watched, and I briefly explained to her the storyline of the 3 films that we have chosen. And when I explained the narrative of Manas, she was like, "Oh, I heard that happened in a village in Bulgaria like 15 years ago." And that made me think. I feel like what Manas explored is something that is happening all around the world, but somehow it's untold. And I feel like this is a story that needs to be shared and viewed and talked about as much as we can, because if it's happening in a village in the Amazon rivers, if it's happening in a village in Bulgaria 15 years ago, I guess it is a problem. And I feel like it's really brave to make a film about that. And I feel like making it with, as Victor said, such precision, it's really an accomplishment. And yeah, I was deeply moved by it. Deeply moved. This was one of the few films that I just, when it finished, I felt like I need a break. I need to think. I need to process. Yeah.
Dimos?
I'm not gonna add a lot of, like my colleagues already said most of, which I totally agree with. I just want to point out again you talked all about an accomplishment, and I totally see that. I think it's very common in films to have stories that have to do with abuse that are so like mishandled, and it's really refreshing and beautiful to see a direction that does like serves its purpose 1000%. If it was another style, I think it wouldn't be able to evoke the feeling of the character. If it was handled in a way that showed more graphic violence, it would also like be more exploitative. It was such a difficult thing to achieve, and like it's wonderful to see something that like is as as refreshing. And I don't know if you talked about the acting already, but to me it almost felt that I'm watching real people. It was incredible. And the last comment that I want to make is like, it did a very good job in the world building of the like that there is no escapability from this world of abuse. That like you have the father who is obviously the abuser, but you also have the barges, which is posed in this society, in this place as like a way out, but it's also a form of abuse. And basically that creates a whole system, you know, that you don't have to show from outside. You don't have to show in reports. You don't have to show in news or on TV. You show it through a personal experience. And that stayed with me a lot after. I had to think about it a lot afterwards.
Okay. It feels like you're ready to vote. So shall we proceed? You will each get a little piece of paper and a pen, and unlike yesterday, today you have to pick the title, the film which should be the winner of the Giornate degli Autori Directors Award 2024. In the meantime, there'll be 11 votes. The president of the jury, Joanna Hogg, will have 1 vote. And then I just want to remind that the film, in order to win, has to reach at least 7 votes, which is 2/3 of the votes. And while you're writing and deciding, I will reach for my faithful comrade of last decade, the fishbowl. Feel free to throw it in. Just count the votes. Is this everybody done? Okay.
My pen didn't work.
Don't worry, I have time.
Now
You good? You're good. So, I guess for the sake of transparency, I will be reading out loud. Manas. Manas. The antique. Manas. 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 Manas with a lot of hearts around it. Antique. So it's quite clear that the winner of the Jubilee 10th Giornate degli Autori Directors Award is Manas. Congratulations. This is a nice addition to the ongoing discussions about the length of the standing ovations. Before I give the microphone to director of Giornate degli Autori, Giorgio Gosetti, for the final word, I'd like to thank you all for another brilliant Giornate degli Autori edition. Almost quarter of the century in the business. I've never encountered such a beautiful activity, and I'm so happy that I could be here with you guys. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Giorgio. And the mic is yours.
Well, on behalf of Gaia Führer, artistic director, and our president, Francesco Martinotti, I'm so moved too, honestly, because it's a special edition, it's the 10th anniversary. Every one of yours were in the previous juries, so you knew the way in which we work. The newcomer, it was Joanna, not scared, but surprised by the idea to have this kind of confrontation and to be in streaming today. I know it's a stress for everyone to declare himself in public, to discuss in public, but I followed your discussion and it was passionate as ever. I have to thank Karel Och, reminding him that it's a duty and he has to continue with us for the next years. You know, for our selection, everyone you decide like the winner is the good one. We never declared our passions, and we are in love with all the 10 films we presented. In this case, yes, it was a sort of an unanimous decision. I'm really happy for the attention you pay to Antiquari, because as you know, it has a very hard story during Venice. And I was touched by the way in which you discussed it, like a movie, not like just a political or legal case. The film is now shooting in the original theater, and so we're really proud to have the chance to give him freedom, to give to the director the freedom to express herself. I think that it's really interesting that one of the 3 films was the first one presented in competition, which demonstrates that the jury can be attentive to all the films, not losing memory through the days. And thank you so much. I know that you are professionals and not newcomers in this industry or in this system. I hope to meet you very soon in other festivals, in other markets, in other situations. Good luck to everyone. Thank you so much.